call this regular city council meeting to order on August 19th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mr. Eimer?
Present.
Mr. Bateman?
Present.
Mr. Sanders?
Present.
Mrs. McClellan?
Present.
Mr. Parrott?
Present.
Mr. Downs?
Present.
Mrs. Ross?
Present.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Is there anybody like to speak under public participation this evening? Okay. For the record, there is no public participation. We will start with the consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening consists of 5A, payment of bills, and 5B, approval of August 13th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Do we have to make a motion to amend the date to July 9th?
I was gonna wait until that and then go into discussion, but that's fine. As long as you guys are fine with it, I'm fine with it. Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to amend the consent agenda
To reflect,
to reflect, to change August 13th, 2024 to July 9th, 2024.
is there a second on the amendment? Alderman Downs made the amended motion, Alderwoman O'Donoghue second. Any discussion? Roll call on the amendment, please.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Okay, now is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Is there a second?
Second.
Alderwoman Rolfs made the motion, Alderman Eimer second. Discussion? Roll call on the consent agenda as amended, please.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us down to item 6A, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of real estate. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
Alderman Bateman made the motion, Alderman Downs second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Okay, next item is 6B, an ordinance authorizing and providing for the issuance of not to exceed $6 million aggregate principal amount general obligation bonds, alternate revenue source, Series 2024 of the City of Lincoln, Logan County, Illinois, and for the levy of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal of and interest on said bonds.
Move to approve.
Second.
Alderwoman Rolfs made the motion, Alderman Eimer second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Okay, that brings us to item 8A, City Treasurer's Report for July 2024. Treasurer Conzo.
Thank you, Mayor. You've all received copies of this report, and you can see there our general fund balance has improved a little bit. They're not quite as much as we would like, of course, but it has improved over where it was a month ago. And you'll see there also below that the various receipts that the city has received from the state of Illinois, and I'll get into that in a little bit here. But I wanted to call your attention to the pension funds. There we did see increase in the police pension fund where the stock market was up at that point. But since then, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the stock market go down and go back up and go down. So I'm not sure that the balance is going to be quite as good at the end of August based on what we've been seeing over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Fire pension fund, I really don't have anything to tell you. They're a little behind. This is the state consolidated fund. They're a little bit behind in getting those reports out, and they have told me that the reason for that is the end of the state's fiscal year is June 30th, as I think most of you know. Some reason the police pension fund was able to get their report out for the end of the year. This one has not, so this is essentially the same as the report that you received last month, except that the John Hancock annuities have been updated to reflect their balance as of the end of July. And you see they did have a pretty nice increase there. So we'll update that as soon as we get those reports. They tell us we can expect the June and July reports by the end of August, so we should have those next month. Looking at the various sources of revenue, you'll see some positive trends there and some not so positive, but sales tax and the use tax, there you see where we are to date, which is about 110,000, 114,000 over where we were a year ago, which we had kind of planned for. So we're not going to exceed our revenue projections necessarily. We had projected that to increase. A lot of that, as I've said numerous times, based on the fact that everything costs more to begin with. So when you have more higher cost of everything, the sales tax is going to be higher as well. And I think that's what you're seeing reflected there. Non-home rule sales tax, very similar. That's up by about 17,000 over last year. Of course, that's a much smaller tax. It's 0.5%, and it's not levied on groceries and a number of other things. Automobiles, for example, are not subject to the non-home rule sales tax, where they are subject to state sales tax. And the income tax, there we did see increase overall, about 100,000 ahead of where we were. Keep in mind, a lot of this has to do with distribution too, so we'll see where we go throughout the rest of the year. People filing quarterly returns at different times of the year, so you'll see that economic trends reflected in that, I think, later in the year. The replacement tax, now there we're down by about 300,000, and we did project that to decrease based on information that we received from the IML, from the Illinois Municipal League. So we did budget for a decrease there. That amount of that decrease does concern me, though, so we'll see where that goes throughout the rest of the year, but that's a substantial increase, about 280,000 to be exact, over where we were a year ago at this point in time. So, you've seen increases in some of the other ones I just mentioned. It's kind of offset by this, so we'll just kind of have to see where it goes from here. So we're not really, if you look at those first three that I mentioned, it looks like substantial increases in those, but this is also a very substantial decrease. So we'll have to see how that compares as we go on. Motor fuel tax, we're just about where we were a year ago. Price of gas has gone up. They've also enacted an additional increase in the motor fuel tax, but that hasn't resulted in much of an increase in the overall motor fuel tax receipts, because the price of gasoline has gone down, and as a result of that, people are driving less, is what I think is happening. It's assessed not on the price of the gasoline, as I've mentioned before, but on the gallons. So if they're selling fewer gallons, the gas might be $4 a gallon, where a year ago it was $3 a gallon. The amount of the tax, it doesn't go up with that, but it does go down with decreased consumption. So a lot of times raising the motor fuel tax has the opposite effect, and particularly when it's a substantial increase in the price per gallon of the gasoline. And then the video gaming tax, that's just about where it was a year ago at this point. Actually, it looks about $5,000 ahead of where we were a year ago. We were at $251,404.34. We're at $256, as you see there, a little over $256. So we're see a little bit of an increase in that, and a lot of that came within this last month. For some reason, I don't know why, but for some reason it went up more in this last month. And a lot of times that can be due to collection factors too, something that was delinquent in a previous month, they collected it in a later month, and So sometimes you'll see that, especially with the things that yield smaller amounts of taxation or smaller amounts of tax revenue. And that's all I have unless there are questions about this.
I actually had somebody asking, can you explain what the state pull tabs and jar games tax is?
Yeah, they pay that annually. Places like the American Legion, I think, still does this. The Eagles, maybe other. The Elks doesn't do that, I know, but the clubs like that, fraternal organizations generally have these pull tabs that they sell when they have dinners or when they have other things, and the state collects a tax on that, and usually it's a 1-year distribution, once a year distribution, sometimes twice a year, but it's not something we get every month, and it's not a lot of money, as you see from. I didn't talk about that, Alderman Bateman, but I'm glad you brought it up on the front page. It was $1,765.57. So, and we'll get that, every year, more or less. Usually we get about 2,200, so that kind of tells me that's probably it.
I tried to explain to it like I used bingos and stuff like that, and of course they're like, "Are you serious that the state actually taxes that?" And I'm like, "It's the state of Illinois. We're going to tax everything." so yes, but I used the term bingo because I couldn't describe what a pull tab and all that kind of stuff
You have
is,
to
but-
see those to know what they are.
But I did
you
tell
know?
him, I said, it's like the Eagles Lodge and Moose Lodge and those kind of things. It's those kind of games that they have.
Yeah, they walk around and they sell the. Is that right?
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Conzo? Okay, thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Next up is item 8B, the city clerk's report for July 2024. Ms. Bateman.
In the month of July, we received $341,725.91 of sewer receipts, which also $18,867.48 was from one of the prisons.
Questions for Ms. Bateman? Okay, thank you. Next up is 8C, department head reports for July 2024. They're either on file on the city website or will be soon. Moving on to item 9A, approval of agreement for construction engineering services between Crawford Murphy and Tilley Incorporated and the city of Lincoln in an amount not to exceed $100,000.
Move to approve.
Second.
Alderman Bateman made the motion. Alderman Sanders second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullen?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer? Yes. Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Next item is 9B, approval of the appointment of Rod Harrison to the Code Enforcement Officer position.
So moved. Second.
Alderwoman O'Donoghue made the motion. Alderwoman McClellan second. Discussion? Mr. Parrott.
So I know that we had anticipated a little more hours out of this position. If it comes after this coming, let's say, a year or some time with this employee that we're just not getting enough time with them, will we reevaluate the situation?
Absolutely, and if a candidate that comes forward in that amount of time that can dedicate more hours to the position, then I would absolutely have to reevaluate and consider replacing the employee with a candidate.
I imagine it's tough to find someone that wants to work 25 hours a week or whatever on this type of position.
Especially
Qualifications and
right, especially with trying to seek a candidate who's very qualified that I know that I can trust to work around confidential information and things like that in the police department. So,
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. McCullen?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer? Yes. Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Next item is 9C, approval of the recommended targets for the curb and sidewalk replacement project.
Move to approve. Second.
Alderman Sanders made the motion, Alderman Downs second. Discussion? Ms. Ralston, then Mr. Bateman.
Yes, well, can you go through the process? Because I know some people ask me, how do you determine which ones you're gonna do?
Well, a lot of time it's an evaluation on our part as a department, and then also issues that constituents that submit requests for, and we just kind of look at those and put it all together and look at the areas and try to come up with what makes the most sense.
Do you seem to have very many concerns about sidewalks where people do a lot of walking?
Over the years, we've targeted a lot of those, especially the school, the places where the school children have traveled. We've replaced a lot of sidewalks up and down College and 8th Street. Basically, the high school has new sidewalk, or Wyatt Avenue has new sidewalk from the high school clear to Wyatt or to Kickapoo Street. And those are the areas, each year we can't tackle them all, but we'll go back next year and do a couple more blocks if we can, and then finally we get that area completed.
So if someone does have concerns about sidewalks in their area, the best thing to do is for them to give you a call?
They should report it to us, yes, so we can get something on file, on record for it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bateman.
So mine's more or less for next year. I would like after this year, or here shortly, with Mr. Landers, get with the treasurer and look at the amount of monies we've had in the budget each year for sidewalks, and try to come up with targets that we can go out for bid more or less at the end of the year or the very beginning of the year, when all the contractors are hungry and wanting to bid out work. So that I personally, going back looking at the dollar amount, it is so close, it is less than 10%, that I feel comfortable we could go out for bid. If it comes in a little over, then we cut back a few feet. If it comes in a little under, we can always add more targets. My goal is to try to get as maximum amount of footage of sidewalk or streets repaired for the dollar amounts that we have, and I firmly believe in the fact that the earlier we go out for bid, that's when those contractors are really looking for work, especially at the end of the year. If we could get to where we're going out for bid October, November, December, for them to book for the following year, I believe in my experience that we'll get more bang for the buck that way. And I just feel that if the treasurer and Walt can come up with a good educated guess of how close it is, and like I said, I've done a few years worth of research, the dollar amount is really close, that we can make a pretty good guess at it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Ms. Rolfs.
Well, does that cover the downtown streets also? Are they put in this mix, or is that a different mix?
You have areas where you can do smaller sections, but then there's other areas that should be a much larger project. So if we were to pick something downtown, and eventually we will have to, so we're looking at something modified compared to what our streetscape stuff was. Something modified a little different than what it was, because the dislike for the curb extensions and things like that. But you're talking, you don't have enough money budgeted. If you're lucky, you would have enough to complete one block.
Are there
Just because
grants out there for downtowns, or?
I'm not aware of any.
Because I was wondering, if we're looking at the Economic Development Committee, and I know we're working on looking at different things for grants, would downtown sidewalks fall into a category that we could
Well,
possibly do something?
It all depends on the grant that's available. So I get the emails, but Ms. Metelko, I've made sure she's on those as well, because that's one of her responsibilities, is to look at grant opportunities. We get those emails weekly, and then we also work with Andrea Runge at LEAD, and she's very good at identifying grants. We've worked with other individuals as well. So sometimes the grants are identified by other sources, but they need a municipality to actually apply for those things. So we're looking into them. It's constantly something we're working on.
I know we're giving suggestions to Ashley now, so I thought, well,
Yep.
maybe this would be a possibility. Okay.
Yeah, we can have her give a little bit more focus to that, but she is doing it. Mr. Landers and then Mr. Bateman.
One thing that I would like to remind you is that our department, our staff is continually doing sidewalks. I mean, we're not, we have targets lined up. I've got targets that are requests that are a year or two old. So, we're always tackling that stuff on our own too. So it's not, it's not a standstill. We're constantly working to complete those requests that we get. So just wanted to remind everybody of that. And also is the mild weather that we've been having the last few years, it's extended our concrete season. We're pouring concrete in December. It's been mild enough that we don't have to worry about that. So the season's been extended.
Mr. Bateman.
So Saturday night, I had a older woman take me out for dinner, and which was enjoyable. We went for a walk afterwards. So my question is, we walked around the parks in Lincoln. They're county parks, but I noticed Scully Park, we were walking on the Kickapoo side. It's not the worst I've seen in town, but it is broken up pretty bad. Is that, I know that's a county-owned property, but is that a city sidewalk at that point?
It would be the county's responsibility.
Okay.
So if we do a resurfacing project, and let's just say we're doing a mill and overlay, and we cross that crosswalk, then we would be responsible for correcting the ramps, making the ramps ADA. But as far as the straight run of sidewalk, I'm assuming that would be the county's responsibility. Because it's not city right of way. I think their property lines come clear to the curb, I believe.
Yeah, what about the sidewalk around the courthouse?
That would be the county's.
All the way out to the curb, correct?
And when we did the traffic signal work where we took something out or just, had to tear something out or correct the ramps, the ADA, make it ADA compliant, we did that work on our own at our expense because we're the ones that caused the disruption.
Right. Okay. Any other discussion regarding the curb and sidewalk replacement program? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McCullen?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Okay, last item on the agenda this evening is 9D, approval of investment of $350,000 in a 6-month certificate of deposit and $350,000 in a 9-month certificate of deposit at United Community Bank.
So moved.
Alderwoman McClellan made the motion. Alderwoman O'Donoghue second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. O'Donoghue?
Yes.
Mr. Eimer?
Yes.
Mr. Bateman?
Yes.
Mr. Sanders?
Yes.
Mrs. McClellan?
Yes.
Mr. Parrott?
Yes.
Mr. Downs?
Yes.
Mrs. Ross?
Yes.
Okay, that brings us down to announcements. I've got a couple, just real quick things. Coffee with the Mayor was this past weekend on Saturday, and I asked Mr. Landers, Mr. Woodhull joined, and then Mr. Bateman showed up halfway through the event. But there was pretty good turnout. Probably 10, 12 people showed up, asked a lot of good questions. We covered a large variety of topics. Public safety was a big one. A lot of questions regarding that. People are concerned about the safety of the community. Just roads came up, just a number of variety of things. So just so you know, those things seem to be working, and I'm appreciative to everybody who's participated. We'll continue to do it. Next one will be October. We haven't set a date for that one yet. The last item I have, I wanted the council to have a heads up before you see it published. but I've been working with Miss Matelko on what we're calling movie night in the park. So the Third Friday Committee had talked about doing something into the later months, but that Third Friday Committee gets pretty exhausted. It's a lot of work to do that. So I was talking with Miss Matelko, and we just thought it would be a good idea. So it's a very low budget, family friendly thing that we can do. Take advantage of one of our parks. We've got the space and we've got the equipment to do it. So we're tentatively shooting for September 21st at 7 p.m. Sunset's supposed to be around 6:55, and that'll be up at the 8th Street Park. So the flyer will go out here pretty soon, but I wanted everybody to hear it from us before you saw it online. We're shooting to play the movie If. It's a newer children's movie. It stands for Imaginary Friend. It's a really good movie. So hopefully we get a good turnout. So would love to have everybody join us if you could. Mr. Barrett.
That would like bring your own lawn chairs and refreshments and.
Yeah. Bring a chair, bring a blanket. If you have specific snacks and stuff you want, then bring those. We're looking at trying to get somebody to come and maybe serve some food. And we've got some placement laid out for that over closer to the dog park to keep it kind of away from the movie area. So, more details to come on that. We're shooting tentatively for the corner of 8th Street and Pine, and it'll actually kind of the screen will direct more towards the fitness park, the dog park, in that direction. So, and it's a little bit of a higher elevation, so it might be easier for everybody to see. So we just thought it'd be a nice thing to do for the community, and so more details to come on it. Okay, that's all I have. Mr. Bateman?
Well, obviously, it's the big weekend. Balloons over 66 this weekend. 34 balloons out at Open Arms, the old Lincoln Christian University. This is just a reminder that I'm just going to say, be mindful that downtown streets are going to close Friday. It is a staggered close, but that's just for a short time for consider to some of the businesses that do more of a breakfast stuff like Guest House and Mama's, but everything will close down for good at noon on Friday. Dock Dogs start at 1 o'clock. Right now I have at least 10 food vendors. 2 of those committed tonight to be serving lunch at noon, so you'll be able to come downtown and get some food off a food truck at noon. The rest will be setting up during the day. There's several bands scheduled for this weekend. There's a bags tournament, a car show, 18 plus teams showing up for a softball tournament in town, There's a group traveling Route 66 from overseas and across the nation, a bunch of Porsches. You'll be able to see some Porsches show up on Pekin Street, and then they plan on sticking around and going out to the Glow. But weather looks good. Hope to see everybody downtown. Dock Dogs is always a big fan favorite, but we'll have main food vendors on Kickapoo. Barbecue teams, obviously, there's a steak cook-off Friday night and the KCBS sanctioned backyard barbecue Saturday morning, and Dock Dogs during that time. And we'll also have some food vendors over toward the Dock Dog event. Mr. Kohler is bringing 2 trailers. So for you people that like to get your French fry on, he is bringing 2 trailers for this year's event. Just be mindful of the parking in the downtown area and street closures and a lot of pedestrians. Craft fair.
I think I saw.
I think I also forgot out at the Oasis.
Yep.
Has got a craft and vendor fair out there. Also, I don't exactly know the times, but I think it's Friday evening and all day Saturday. Latham Park will have a smaller kids event on Friday night, but bouncy houses and a lot of stuff for kids to do all day Saturday till about 4 or 5, because that is ran by Open Arms, and they'll be then moving out to their facility for the balloons out there at the Christian University. So busy weekend. I'm positive all the hotels will be sold out with everything that's coming into town. So come down and enjoy. I've
And-
lost track of what year it is.
I think-
14th year, 15th year?
And I think I saw online that tourism's got the schedule of events. If anybody wants, because you just mentioned a lot of things, so
Yeah, there's scheduled events, and they are going to, if you're downtown, the plan was we're having some QR codes printed up, stick them on the street. You'll be able to just scan it real quick, and it'll take you right to the event, give you a map of directions where to go. But you should be able to find anything you want to do this weekend.
and if you have an interest in the balloon portion, there's 35 balloons. Takes a lot of crew to make that happen. So if it's something that interests you, you want to try it or do it, you can go out to the Comfort Inn.
Comfort
And
Inn.
it's at Friday at 5 o'clock, and they'll have a pilot briefing. But if you want to help crew, they'll pair you up with a pilot that needs help. It's kind of a fun thing to do, and sometimes they give you a ride in the balloon if that's something that interests you for doing it.
So also new for this year, at least in my memory, I don't remember them doing it before, is on Saturday morning, a balloon will take off somewhere in the community and fly toward Open Arms and drop a beanbag out, and then that becomes the target. And then the other balloons will go to areas out in the community, obviously to where the wind will take them that direction. And so they're actually competing for prizes where they'll, if you want to be, I guess what I'm saying is, if you want to be to see it, you would want to go out to Open Arms Saturday morning, because all the balloons will be flying toward Open Arms to drop the bags as close to the target as they can.
yeah, it's called Fox and Hound.
So that's Saturday morning, and then Saturday evening. I don't know where they're taking off from Saturday evening, but obviously Saturday night is the balloon glow.
Yep. So, a lot going on with the festival. I'm glad that I think we're very thankful to everybody who helps make that happen. There's tons of people. I know there's a committee that meets most of the year to pull it all together. So huge thanks to those of you that are on that committee. So one thing I also forgot to mention earlier, thank you, Mr. Landers, for helping Miss Metelka with the layout for the movie and things like that. He's been helping make sure we get electricity ran over there. We're going to run a generator and make it work. So didn't want to forget you. Okay. Anybody else have an announcement they'd like to make? Okay. If there's no other announcements, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Alderman Downs made the motion. Alderman Eimer second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. The meeting is adjourned at 6:33 p.m.